Slow start ended up costing the Panthers Monday night in Philadelphia. And are the Panthers overly reliant on special teams? All this and more on today's Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Tuesday, October 14th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News, and you can follow me on X at Monoman12. Follow the show anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. Shout out to every day who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com to win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. You can do that all on FanDuel. So, Panther fans, grateful to be back here once again on another edition of the show to discuss everything in the world of the Florida Panthers, even in a loss where the Florida Panthers started their 5-game road trip on Monday in Philadelphia, and the Florida Panthers gave Daniil Tarasov the start for the Cats against Dan Vladar, where they were seeing the Philadelphia Flyers for the second time in as many days as the Flyers home opener, and the Flyers great start to the game. They had the juices flowing while the Florida Panthers were behind, and it resulted in the scoreboard falling behind as much as 2-0. The Panthers got it to a tie game in the third, thanks to a special teams goal, but a late goal in the third period and 2 empty netters, and it made the score close, a lot further than it actually was. And the takeaway of the game for the Florida Panthers, as they lost 5-2 against the Flyers, was a very slow first period. And once again, for the Panthers, this comes down to what Paul Maurice consistently talks about as far as whenever a team has an emotional advantage. And in this case, the Florida Panthers getting off to their hot start at home, and maybe usually when they go on the road, they are more locked in, as we saw how they did throughout the Stanley Cup playoffs, but not off to a great start for them, being in this road trip. The fact that they were just a lot slower to pucks consistently disrupted in the neutral zone. The breakout passes weren't connecting as much as we were seeing in the first 3 games of the season, and it resulted in the Panthers falling behind. I mean, the fact that the Panthers, for the most part in the first period, their shots on goal were as much as 3, before they ended up at 5 at the end. The 2 of the 3 chances that they had in the first period were mostly on breakaway opportunities, and a shorthanded breakaway opportunity where a nice sauce from by Anton Lundell, and Dan Vladar was able to make the stop, and Dan Vladar was stopping the Panthers' rush opportunities, where Mackie Semiskevich and Carter Verhaeghe were also starting to get their chances in the first period. But pressure in the offensive zone, and the Philadelphia Flyers pounced just about midway through the period. And once again, Nico Mikkola even spoke about it to the media, even saying that they were not on their game and they were slow to pucks in the first period. But the ice started to tilt towards the Panthers. I mean, they came buzzing within the first minute of the period, and Daniil Tarasov making a save early on that prevented the Panthers from trailing even further, 2-0. But we talked about the penalty taken percentage from the Panthers versus their opposition, being at 12 power play opportunities to 7 in the first 3. It was kind of the opposite for the Panthers, as they were starting to fall behind and going to the box consistently. But I started seeing a little bit of a shift in the tilting of the ice for the Panthers, especially on the because all their penalty kills, especially in the second period, were a tale of 3 penalty kills. And there was one PK, I believe it was the one where Jesper Bokus went to the box for holding against Jamie Drysdale, that the Panthers were stuck on their end of the ice for the entirety of the 2 minutes, and the 3 out of the 4 guys on the ice, with Etu Lusterin also breaking a stick. Luke Cunnin was stuck on the ice uh, only 3 out of the 4 guys were able to change out of their own end. So the Panthers not being on the opposite side and putting the pressure on Dan Vladar and the Philadelphia Flyers, they prevented themselves the opportunity to even though the score was at 2-2 in the third period, they didn't give themselves an opportunity to possibly tilt this more in their direction, because even after the goal that the Philadelphia Flyers scored 15 minutes into the second period, Panthers responded 4 minutes later on the shorthanded breakaway opportunity from Sam Reinhart, realized that Vladar was out of his net, and finished on the wraparound after following his shot on, and it all resulted on a board battle win in their own D zone and then getting it out. So that's something that they weren't doing in the first period. So like I said, the tale of three different PKs for the Panthers in that second period. There was also one PK where they had later on where they were cycling in the offensive zone and they were getting the pinches to keep it out in the zone, keep it in the Flyer zone, excuse me. So it was just you saw the pendulum swing for the Panthers even when they were starting to get the to close in on the deficit on Monday night in Philadelphia. And to think that even though the Panthers were buzzing and not allowing a shot for the Philadelphia Flyers in over a 20-minute stretch, you thought that the Panthers would have found the way. Sam Bennett scores on a special teams setup from Sam Reinhart, which was another goal, whereas Dan Vladar was stuck in his net, and then this time it was a setup from Sam Reinhart to Sam Bennett, the two Sams connecting for the Panthers. And then penalty trouble continued for the Panthers going into the third period on a big slash from Sam Bennett while they were on the power play that ended that drought that Philadelphia had, where they went almost 20 minutes without a shot. And that's the difference, where Sam Bennett comes out of the box, although it's not a special teams goal by the Philadelphia Flyers. An outstanding setup from Trevor Zegras to Sean Couturier, that was his second goal of the night. That was his third point of the evening. And the Panthers are playing from behind once again, never leading in this one. And the Panthers also made a little bit of a switch up in their forward lines to start the third period, switching up Carter Hagee and Eetu Luostarinen on the top two lines, where Eetu Luostarinen was being with Sam Bennett and Brad Marchand, which Brad Marchand was, although he still battled well in the neutral zone and gained speed, he was left off of the shots for the Panthers, although they tilted the ice in their direction. The Eetu Luostarinen broken stick, that's also time that the Panthers are not in their own end when they have such a hard time clearing. But still, all in all, after all that, they still gave themselves a chance to win. I mean, you think about the power play goal that Sam Bennett scored, all the things that happened before that, where Seth Jones was a grown man on that shift, keeping the pucks in. The Marchand line was forechecking and not allowing Philadelphia to clear. They were at least a minute in their own end before they got a whistle. And to think that the Panthers also had a TV timeout before they got on that power play, the Panthers were feasting at that point, and you knew that the Panthers were going to find a way to tie that game. And you're thinking that with all the players who are missing for the Panthers, and still it being a 2-2 game that late in the game, you look back at this, you're thinking 9 times out of 10 you replay this game and you see that the Panthers will come out on the winning end. But again, we've seen with the Florida Panthers and in their previous quests of the Stanley Cup, I know these aren't connected, but they've lost in Philadelphia, they've lost in Chicago, and there have been times where they've lost in these games where they have the control of the game and they still come out on the losing end, which is what you'll see a lot throughout an 82 game season. So you see some foundational habits that the Panthers still have while in this game, although in a losing effort, but you know that you got to clean clean up some of the breakout stuff. And even when you gain the zone, and make sure that you're uh, passing on the give and goes a lot faster instead of allowing the defense to collapse on you and then separate, and then that creates a breakaway opportunity. Which I'll talk more about that in segment number 2, which we'll discuss more about our 3 duds of the game and the moment where we knew the game was lost. We'll discuss all that and more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And the NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get 300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. You pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock 300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And it makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little riding in on the action. And as I'm reading this advertisement, the Chicago Bears just hit a game-winning field goal. So if you place the bet on the Chicago Bears against the Washington Commanders, you are probably enjoying your winnings at this moment in time. And whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Once again, download the FanDuel app today to get started. Segment number 2 here on this Tuesday, October 14th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Tuesday, as the Florida Panthers are coming off a 5-2 loss at the hands of the Philadelphia Flyers in their home opener and the first road game of the season for the Panthers. So you look at this game and you're thinking that the Panthers could have at least earned themselves a point, but it's a 60-minute game for the Panthers. And when you don't show up for that first 20, and it being a third of the game, and playing catch up, don't be surprised at times when you find a goose egg when it comes to the amount of points that you get, versus a different night when sometimes the puck does you find a way to get the puck into the back of the net. So Panthers lost 5-2, which means we are going to be discussing our 3 duds of the game and the turning point, the moment where we knew the game was lost. So third dud of the game, I'm going to go with Carter Verhaeghe. Like I mentioned, gaining the zone, the Philadelphia Flyers were collapsing on him, and he finds a way to turn it over. And there's also a little bit of a activation in the offense from the third pair that resulted in Jeff Petrie being on an island on that Couturier breakaway. And Carter Verhaeghe, we've spoken about his physicality and his ability to set up guys. Him and Mackey have been clicking pretty well on the power play, especially because 4 out of the 6 goals for the Panthers are coming from the second power play unit, which, hey, now they have only just double the amount of goals that the first power play unit has, with Sam Bennett scoring tonight, but 0 hits and a costly turnover that resulted in the Panthers going down 2-0. And like I mentioned, a little bit of a switch of the lines that Paul Maurice put in that third period, and likely it's going to be temporary. Maybe we'll see about that, but usually Paul Maurice puts it as a little bit of a spark, but then refers back to what they had prior in the beginning of that game. So we will see what Paul Maurice decides to do on Wednesday night in Detroit. Dud number 2 for the Panthers. I'm going to go with Sam Bennett. Yeah, got a big power play goal for the Panthers, but a mishandling on the puck on the first goal. Probably didn't see that one coming. And for the Panthers, an opportunity to take the lead, and it's a very costly penalty on former Panther Noah Juleson, which battling along the half wall / corner, and then slashes him right there, and then goes to the box. You're a minute into the power play for the Panthers, and that's the stretch that they didn't allow a shot in 20 minutes. So, and then just quickly, the Flyers were able to get 2, and one of them ended up in the back of the net. The Flyers They got 3 goals on 4 shots in that third period, which you're if you're box score watching, you may think that the Flyers blew the Panthers out, but Daniil Tarasov is nowhere near the problem for tonight for the Panthers, which I'll get to Daniil Tarasov a little bit later in segment number 3 about the job that he did and what the Panthers are going to need from their forwards during his starts, especially. Um, and he also, let's not forget, he also drew to Sam Bennett did to Trevor Zegras, went behind the goal line, which outstanding individual play, by the way, from Trevor Zegras to thread the needle, backdoor it to Couturier for that second goal. So it's also a great individual play by Trevor Zegras, who's getting a new opportunity uh, in Philadelphia after a pretty bitter ending in Anaheim for his tenure there. Uh, Number one dud. I'm gonna go with Uvis Belinskis. Like I mentioned, when Carter Hagee gained his zone, there was also an activation in the offense with Uvis Belinskis there. I didn't say the name until just now that it was Uvis that was there. But this is the problem with having two puck moving, offensively dominant defensemen for your third pair for the Panthers with Jeff Petrie and Uvis there, where Dmitry Kulikov is more of a stay-at-home guy and brings the physicality along the walls instead of activating much on the rush. So that ended up confusing Jeff Petrie there, where Sean Couturier was able to get behind him, and then on that breakaway opportunity, and also was the one uh, that the Flyers were forechecking on for the first goal of the game before Sam Bennett ultimately fumbled the puck after that, which resulted in the first goal by Tyson Forster, which that was a partial change by that Forster line with Couturier on as well. And that was Forster Kate's line was performing well on Saturday in Carolina for them, and also they got a goal off a draw on that Thursday game against the Florida Panthers. So the the middle six has actually been coming through for Rick Tocker and his squad this season. So if you're a Philadelphia Flyers fan, are you pleased about this? If you happen to be a Flyers fan, let me know in the comments below. Jamie Drysdale, he was teammates with Trevor Zegras. He was part of that trade with Cutter Gauthier, which he didn't want to be with the Flyers anymore, and he played an outstanding game for Philadelphia. And to think that they're still missing two big names on their blue line in Ristolainen and Cam York, and they adjusted to what the Florida Panthers were doing when it came to the pressure that the Panthers would put in the offensive zone. So that is a great adjustment, despite them missing a few guys on their blue line, which the Panthers were just uh, not able to get it going early on. And you think that if the Panthers were able to, at least for 10 minutes in the first period, this probably isn't even a 1-0 game going into the second, and that the reset that the Panthers would have going into it, that would have at least given the Panthers at least a point in on Monday night's game. But those are going to be costly for you. But the moment where we knew the game was lost for the Cats was the Trevor Zegras setup to Couturier. And like I said, a great individual play. Daniil Tarasov lost the stick temporarily on that one, was given the stick back, but really couldn't get in the position that he needed to once he lost the stick and regained his form. Just didn't see that backdoor pass from Trevor Zegras to Sean Couturier coming there. So once again, not going to put this one on Tarasov. I thought he gave the Panthers a great chance to win, but the Panthers are going to need a little bit more in their starts with Daniil Tarasov between the pipes, because if you want to give Sergei Bobrovsky proper rest and not overtax him, they're going to have to at least get more scoring while Daniil Tarasov is between the pipes. But it is a small sample size for the Panthers right now. So, but at the same time, the Panthers might be overly reliant on special teams. And is that going to be a problem that catches up with the Panthers? We're going to discuss all that and more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. And most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have a full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one easy to use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. So if you got been putting off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization on your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. And use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off of your first year. Once again, that's 50% off of your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. Segment number 3 here on this Tuesday, October 14th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Tuesday. And congratulations to Sergei Bobrovsky on becoming the third star of the week for the NHL, going 3-0-0, a GAA of just under 2, and a save percentage this week of .925. For the Panthers throughout their opening week, winning all 3 games at home. So congratulations to him. So the Florida Panthers won't be seeing the Philadelphia Flyers again until November 26th, which will be the day before, American Thanksgiving. So, which, by the way, I hope everybody had an enjoyable holiday today, and I hope that you enjoyed the sports that we experienced today with some matinee hockey, which Sabres lost at home, and a fan threw a jersey on the ice. And also, Mason Appleton for the Detroit Red Wings, the Florida Panthers' next opponent, he scores with less than a minute left. So for the Detroit Red Wings to down the Toronto Maple Leafs, and they moved up their start time to accommodate the Toronto Blue Jays game against the Mariners, which they ended up losing as well. So great sports day, I will say, on this Monday in mid-October, which once again we are enjoying this time of year. But the Florida Panthers 7-0 differential when it comes to special teams this year, and another Sam Reinhart shorthanded goal in Philadelphia. If you go back to last year, one of the trips that the Panthers made to Philadelphia, Sam Reinhart with an outstanding shorthanded chance allows the goaltender to draw to him, leaving the top part in the net open, and he's able to roof it and get a shorthanded goal there, which, if you notice from the Panthers and Dan Vladar, with how much pressure they were put in the second period, Dan Vladar was going down a lot, which if the Panthers were able to get the rebound opportunities, they would be able to lift the puck and at least get through to Dan Vladar. But a lot of those chances were when the puck would bounce, they would just bounce to the corner, or the Philadelphia Flyers were able to battle it along the walls, as opposed to the Panthers creating second or third chance opportunities, which you're going to see that with this team, with missing a whole bunch of guys on their roster right now, which, speaking of, the Panthers are yet to determine what options to do with Dmitry Kulikov. He's going to see a specialist, and they're going to determine more on that, whether he will need to have an operation. So you could bet that Kulikov is going to be out a significant amount of time for the Panthers if he does happen to go under the knife. But the Panthers' special teams is getting them through so far. But you look at 4 games, you look at 6 5-on-5 goals for the Panthers. That is about an average of less than 2 a game. But what happens if that part of the Panthers game goes cold? Like I mentioned, second unit has been carrying this team throughout this very young season. But even then, you think about the goals that the Panthers scored for their first power play unit. Aaron Ekblad gets a lane, and then he shoots through traffic against the Ottawa Senators on Saturday night. And then with Dan Vladar not being positionally tight in his own net on multiple occasions on both goals, you're able to set up Sam Bennett and he'll score one of the easiest goals that he'll ever score. So that for the Panthers, those are their power play one goals this year. So that you're wondering, you look at it and it's very clear that unit is at least in a little bit of a struggle with getting second chance opportunities and guys playing in different places that they might not have in different stops. I mean, yeah, Brad Marchand has now been with the Panthers, but you're asking him to play an even bigger role with guys that he hasn't really played so much on special teams. Yeah, he has gotten used to playing with Sam Bennett on, um, Anton Lundell and Eetu Luostarinen, but he hasn't spent a lot of time with Sam Bennett until just recently. And 4 nations and a 3-game sample size isn't really truly enough time when you're thinking about building on ice chemistry together. And it's not a unit that's currently uh, working at this moment in time. But you never know how you never know with more reps if they can. But I'm not expecting the rate of power play 2 at a 2-to-1 ratio continue that. And even then, I don't even expect that from power play 1 to have the numbers this skewed early on in the season when you think of power play goals to even strength, which I gave a lot of crap to the Detroit Red Wings last year for being power play merchants, but it helped them win games when they made the coaching change. It's helping the Panthers win games, especially the fact that once again their first 3 wins were all in regulation. That helps with tiebreakers, but the schedule hasn't been strong as of right now for the Panthers. And you know what? You don't complain about getting dubs, and you could argue that they deserved at least one on the night. But I'm starting to wonder now if it's an over reliance on this part of the game. I mean, 2 plus 2 equals 4, right? A power play goal is still a goal, and the Panthers getting 0 on the night at even strength, which Brad Marchand struggled with getting pucks on net, like I mentioned. Uh, so that's one player that I'm hoping to step up as the Panthers continue their road trip. But and here's the thing: you are an aggressive forechecking type of system, and your entire third line are more of speed guys with quick hands, which is that going to result in that third line of Rodriguez, Mackey, and Jesper Boquist? Although Mackey can one day lead an entire line with Evan Rodriguez, most of his points and multi-point games have come with Barkov in the past. I've asked myself, can he play drive his own line for 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 what he is asked to do, which is a big task that is put on his plate. Yes, let's not forget also with that line, Jesper Boquist, after he signed his extension, he went months without getting a goal on the board. And we expect this. We don't expect the third line to pick up the slack as much as the third line would be as currently as it was constructed throughout the Panthers playoff run. I mean, Anton Lundell, Eetu Luostarinen, and Brad Marchand are second lines on other teams. But with the style of play that the Panthers have, with the personnel that they have on that third line, you wonder if that is one line that really needs to have a little bit of a tweak there. The only tweak we saw was the wingers on the top 6. So that's a little bit of a concern for me at this moment in time. You can look at 3-1 and 0 for the Panthers, and you could still kind of see signs of, okay, this may be a little bit of an issue, but it's not even at a panic level of a 3. So I don't want people to get that twisted when you're seeing that I'm pointing out maybe some issues of how the Panthers finish at 5-on-5, because I was even thinking about that internally after game 2 about the Panthers having a hard time finishing. And Daniil Tarasov making a start tonight and going to make a start in one of the games on the back-to-back on Wednesday and Thursday. More than likely, it'll be in New Jersey, if I had to guess. You're going to need more of that goal support for him, because if you're unable to get the high danger chances at 5-on-5, you're going to have to ask your goaltender to steal games. And although Bobrovsky was third star of the week for the Panthers, I don't feel in either of these 3 games that he had to steal any of them. If the Panthers ended up winning this one tonight, Daniil Tarasov would have stole the game for the Panthers. So that's at least a good sign for I mean, in the preseason, he had an AHL roster in front of him, and he was making 48, 49 saves. So calm, cool, collective in his own net. That's a good sign as well. Focusing on his technique, that's a good sign. Versus what we saw on the other end with Dan Vladar. I'll take that, regardless of the 5-2 score. So good signs, but special teams is a little bit of an over reliance right now. So we'll see how the Panthers adjust as they continue this road trip Wednesday night in Detroit. They more than likely they will travel the day before instead of traveling after the game from Philadelphia, as they like to do when they're applying sports science in their recovery. So Panthers will travel then and then be back in action on Wednesday night, a nationally televised game, and we will be back with you guys on Wednesday to preview Wednesday night's game between the Florida Panthers and the Detroit Red Wings in their first matchup between these two Atlantic Division foes. Thank you guys, as always, for listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. But in the meantime, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the shows on Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone, and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Sorry, Armando Velez, signing off. And you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.